Hey, what's up? Well, I hope this video works out well. I'm trying something different, which is a flashlight position to shine on my face. I don't know if it will work, but I know that my sunglasses will help. If it does, I'm trying to illuminate my face so that perhaps if I didn't put it shining directly on me. But yeah, that might be a little better. Maybe if I shine it sort of toward me but not on me. Well, what I want to talk about in this video, I want to title it December Colds. And I guess we've come full circle. So maybe I'll have this one come out in July to say it's been a very happy year of discussing the common cold instead of that tired old subject that I used to like to discuss. So, what I'd like to talk about in this video, I want to talk about just more of the same, about how, I was thinking, I just never run out of ways to analyze the data. I never run out of ways to analyze the graphs of me and these colds I used to get. And I was just thinking about how once upon a time, the most common month for me to get sick was the month of December, bar none. I mean, there was a time I could easily say that I never, ever, when I was in K through 12, never once do I remember getting through the months of November, December, and or January without at least one cold. I mean, the one and only year, which is the one I keep going back to mentally, the one and only year that I remember not getting a cold, not catching a cold in the month of December was my unforgettable 7th grade year. My minimum year. And it would remain my minimum year until my senior year, with my sophomore year being about the same, except I also had chickenpox in February, 4 colds and chickenpox. So every single year that I remember going to school myself in K through 12, I had at least one cold in December for sure. And guess what? The one year when I didn't, my 7th grade year, I just had one over the Thanksgiving holidays. It was pretty bad. About as bad as the one I had 6 months later in May. And it was late November and we had a really late Thanksgiving. And guess what? I was still getting over it in early December. And when I got back from the holidays in January, I got another one in January. And of course, that would be the last one of the year until May, which is unforgettable. The one I got in May. So, all other years, even elementary school, even though I don't have much detailed info on those days, I do remember that I certainly had at least one, approximately around Christmas. Like, there was never a year of elementary that was better than 7th grade. I know that for sure. I know for sure that none was better. And I'm pretty sure that if I didn't have one every single year in December, then I certainly had one either in late November and or January. So I was thinking about December and how, that time of year, December and or January, and how there once was a time when, like, in no grade level, no grade whatsoever. From K through 12, did I ever get through those 2 months, that 62-day or 9-week period? Yeah, it's about 9 weeks from December through January, the coldest part of the year. There was never a year of my school when I didn't have at least one cold during that time period. And really, my first 6 years of life before I ever went to school, there were probably some years when I got them around that time. I mean, I know for sure, I want to say when I was like 4.5, I caught one from a neighbor when my mom brought over some Christmas presents. And they were in daycare and they got me sick. And then I'm pretty sure age 5.5, I may have got one from just shopping at the store after Christmas. And so, from as far back as I can remember, I know my first year of life, I had them November, December, January, and March. And so I want to say through age 20, age 19 would be the last year I would get one in January. And then age 20, I got one in December from my little sister. And so when I look at my first 2 decades of life, I got one from as far back as I remember, during the dead of winter, December through January, and we're about as far away from that as you can get right now. It's kind of 6 months away. So I got at least one cold during those 9 weeks of December and January. Probably every year, at least once, through the age of 20. But here's the funny thing that happened. The strangest thing was that beginning at age 21, when I was 21 and I got that one in October, Wednesday, October 13th, which really made an impression on me because October had not historically been a month when I was likely to get sick. Like I probably hadn't had one. I certainly, hadn't had one in October of 03 or 04, Had it September of 02. No, wait a minute. I had not had one in 02 or 03 in October. So at least 3 years I had not had one in October. And so, and I hardly ever got them in October because I would normally get one at the beginning of the school year, and then I would have a lull until the weather cooled off, and I started getting them during the late fall and early winter, like Thanksgiving and Christmas. But since I was at age 21, I was no longer getting them at the beginning of the school year. Since my beginning of the school year was more like September, like Labor Day. And if my sister caught one, I was well rested enough not to catch it from her anymore. Being an older, adult, well, not older, but an adult in college instead of a kid. So, the year 2004 was very different. It was like another turning point. My sister was in the 7th grade, so she wasn't bringing home as many. And for the first time ever, I got, when I look at the seasons of these colds, I got through the winter, the actual astrological winter. I got through December, January, February, and even March for the first time that I can ever remember. In 04-05, that was the first year when the only 2 colds that I had were October and then May, which was pretty mild. So basically the fall and the spring. So it was like I got through the first winter ever without actually getting a cold in the winter. And then the following year, I made it all the way to March. before I got my one and only colt at age 22, and then age 23. I didn't know it, but that was my last year ever that I would have multiple colts at any age in my life. And I had them in August, last time I would ever have one in August, or a summer month, then November, then May, 6 months later. So once again, I had 3, but none of them were in the actual winter. After November, when my sister got that really bad one and brought it home, it's like I didn't have any more until May, and that one was pretty mild. It was like around the 10-year anniversary of that one in 97. And so the weirdest thing started to happen is that, as I've stated before, wintertime became the second least likely season for me to get a cold in my 20s. Like, the most likely season was spring. The next most likely was fall during the college semester. Then winter, and then of course it didn't happen anymore in the summer. And so, the only 2 December colds that I've had since turning 21 were age 25 from my little cousin in daycare, and age 36 right before the pandemic from a man whose son was in daycare. So always, ironically, it's always from children 12 and under. On the rare occasion when I do get a cold in December. At age 20, it was from my little 11-year-old sister. 25, it was from my, 1.5-year-old little girl cousin in daycare. Age 36, it was from a man who was the father of a 1.5-year-old boy in daycare. And so yeah, the common denominator is children. And oddly enough, it's like, you see, that's why I was getting so many of them until I was 21, because I was consistently around children under 13, consistently, the whole time. And once that was no longer the case is when I started to have 1 or less per year. And ironically, the winter was not really a peak anymore. The winter was, oddly enough, January. I've never had one in January since 19. Came close by getting COVID in early February. So when I think about, just the month of December, how I pretty much had one every single December, through age 20 for 2 decades. And if I didn't get it in December, I got it in late November and or January. And so age 21 was the first cold-free winter. I got 2 of them in the warmer parts of the school year. And 22 made it all the way to spring. 23 got them every season except winter. 24 didn't get one until February. 25, first time in December in 5 years. 26 made it all the way to March. 27, first year was 0. 28, got one in November and never the whole rest of the year. 29, made it all the way to April. 30, none. 31, October only. 32, November only. 33 and 4, no clinical colds. 35, first time in almost 3 years, October only. 36, that one time in December that I was talking about. 37, COVID, my only respiratory illness, in early February. So the first time I'd been sick in February since I was 24. Oh my gosh. What is that? 13 years? Oh my gosh. So 37, 24 to 37. That's the only 2 I've had in February. And then, of course, this one at 40. So 3 times in February as a legal adult. And then, 38, got one in November. 39, October, late October around Halloween, but then 40, of course, this past February. So it's the weirdest thing. It's like I started to notice that the months when I was most likely to get sick, ironically enough, happen to be the very months when I hardly ever had them in childhood, because they were lulls between the peaks. They were the valleys, October and even February. like I'd get them August, November, January, May, like in 7th grade. And so October and February were kind of like valleys. And guess what the small peaks are in my adult life, those very months. So anyway, that rules out seasonal allergies. It isn't allergies because it would be happening at the same time of year every year no matter what. So I'll go ahead and post yet another video about colds.